We can all go in the hall. Go stand in the hallway so that new people who are joining in give a bit more space.
Oké. Michel, heb jij je avatar geüpload voor deze tenant?
Is er ook.
Nee, ik heb die filmpjes even weggehaald, want dat was toch een dingetje.
Hoi.
Dus,
Hey Christian.
Hey, heel goed.
Het is wel een stuk leuker
Christian.
met avatars, hè? Hey,
Jawel, hè? Dan zie je nog in ieder geval iets.
Alright.
Cool, man.
Hey.
Hebben jullie ook een foto?
Hier mag je wel een hand geven, hè?
Ja, precies. Nu mag dat, hè?
How many were you expecting?
Ja, precies. Hier mag je een hand geven. Man.
let's stand over here, Danny. Simon.
Okay.
Hi Simon.
Danny, should we hop over there with Bart?
Yeah.
Just to get a bit more space. Exactly.
Yeah.
Ja, toen je de avatar had gemaakt.
Right.
So, about the
Nice to
amount
meet
of
you,
Speak to
Simon.
properly, Danny. Yeah.
That's nice connecting in VR, right?
Indeed, yeah. Take it to the next level.
Oh, oké.
So about the amount of people, we had a physical event in a couple of years with about 100 people attending. And with that number in mind, we divided it in 3 sessions, because currently we do about 40 people stable in Connect 2. But the whole venue is already fitted for over 200, so that's something we want to be maybe somewhere next year around the same time. And of course, we also have a lot of people on the stream, so hopefully there will be 100 plus viewers there as well.
Ja, we hebben hier wel wat in getest, dus ik ken deze omgeving wel. Maar is die voor jou nieuw?
Ik heb hem een demo gezien.
So maybe, Bart, we can go to the theater and have a
Als we nu doen. Met
short
een hele
meeting
hoop,
there with the 3 of us.
bekenden en onbekenden.
Hoe kom je hier zo terecht, zeg maar? Wat doe je bij Controller?
Wij doen digitale tweelingen.
Ik zag jou al een postje.
Ja?
Daar gebruiken we ook VR voor. En ondertussen ben ik ben jou kwijt. Sta ik nou in jou of...
totaal.
Nee, ik heb hier een slechte internetverbinding, dus het kan zijn dat ik af en toe wegval.
Ja, ik niet meer. Dus sorry als ik ronddraai en met mijn achterhoofd tegen je aankijk.
Jeroen, je bent van CNC Totaal. Is dat... ben je Engels of Nederlands?
Nederlands, ja. Jeroen die is op dit moment niet. Ik ben de vakantiewijker Nico.
Oh, oké. Dus je bent even aan
Tim.
het rondkijken.
Ja, nou op deze manier. Mooi, hè?
Ja.
Ja.
Heb je dat gedaan, dit? Denk het niet, hè?
Top. Die avatars worden ook steeds beter, hè?
Ja.
Geweldig.
We moeten Engels gaan praten. Er zijn hier ook Engelse mensen.
Dit heb ik al een paar keer gezien bij Poker VR. Daar heb je al full body avatars.
Poker VR?
Dat is echt gaaf om te zien.
Full body wil zeggen, dan heb je eerst een scan gemaakt van jezelf of zo? Of hoe werkt dat?
Ja.
Jij zei... Oh,
Ja,
oké. Nee, ik dacht even
jullie-
net echte foto's, zeg maar, gemaakt. Maar dat is niet zo. Maar gewoon met virtuele lichamen. Ja.
Ja, tot aan de romp en de armen zitten er dan nog aan, zeg maar.
Oké. Er zijn wel wat mensen uit het buitenland, maar zolang het niet zo is het
Worden wat
niet,
Engels sprekende mensen, ja.
Ja, precies, dan schakel ik wel over. Maar nu... Ja, heel erg gaaf. Niet verwacht, dit. Zo werkt. En Tim, worden we straks die kant op geroepen of moeten we al naar het theater toe?
Ja, die was met de gastspreker bezig om hem uit te leggen hoe hij zijn presentatie moest doen net. Het zal nog wel eventjes duren. Ja.
Cool.
Het begint ook pas om 4:15, hè?
Dit is gewoon
Volgens
een beetje
dit...
inloop,
Ja.
Ik hoorde van Bart dat dit ook... Canon dit geloof ik al gebruikt voor meetings en zo in de ontwikkeling. wel goed. Zeker wat in ook. Ja.
Vriendenschool, toch? In principe, bedoel je? Of? Zo.
Hoe gebruiken ze het dan?
Zo, ja. Nou, zoals we het nu gebruiken, ziet het eruit dat ze het vooral gebruiken voor 3D-modelleren. Dus 3D-modelleren en dan 3D-modellen uploaden. En dan met z'n allen gaan kijken. Of
design review.
360
Review.
graden tours met z'n allen op schoolreisje, zeg maar.
Ja. Ik zag in de tour ook echt van alles en nog wat. Complete exploratie.
Ja.
Shootspringen volgens mij.
Ik kan het zo gek niet bedenken.
Coronatijd is het een perfect tool om je niet te vervelen.
Als je via de livestream kijkt, Tim, hoe zie je het dan?
De livestream zien de mensen kijken. Ik heb nu ook al een aantal mensen zie ik, die in de chat zitten. Op dit moment hebben we 26 kijkers. Hallo aan alle 26 kijkers, namens ons allemaal hier. En daar hebben we gewoon een mooie video openstaan. Waarbij je gewoon eigenlijk nu een shot ziet van jullie 4. En
oké.
Daar kunnen ze meedoen met de chat.
Oké, dus ze kunnen ons wel horen.
Klein uitgevallen vandaag.
Ja.
Op een stoel.
Maurice zit op een stoel, ja. Maurice.
Ik kan wel even een vraag van de stream pakken. Misschien dat jullie die kunnen beantwoorden. Kan iemand die gebruik maakt van een avatar uitleggen wat hij of zij nu bedient? Hoe ziet het eruit?
Ja, ik
kan je wel
ik
vertellen
heb controles in de hand.
dat je als avatar eigenlijk een spiegel mist. Het zou mooi zijn als jullie hier in de hal een spiegel hadden. Zodat je kunt zien wat voor een hoofd ik zelf gekozen heb. Want ik heb via een app een plaatje gekozen. En ik heb iemand anders moeten vragen van hoe zie ik eruit. En die zei van je hebt inderdaad een bril op en grijs haar. Dus het klopt dat mijn avatar geüpload is.
Nou, ik vind het wel redelijk, het klopt wel redelijk volgens mij. Ik zie er een beetje uit als Roy volgens mij. Maar qua wat je bedient, het is eigenlijk alleen maar die knop om zeg maar vooruit te schieten naar een andere plek.
Ja, ik gebruik mijn joystick hier inderdaad met mijn linkerhand.
Kan je je handen dicht doen en open doen met die knoppen.
Ja. Nee, klopt. De mirror, de spiegelvraag hebben we vaker gehad. En die zit ook zeker op de roadmap voor een volgende versie. Want het is wel heel fijn om je eigen identiteit zeg maar eventjes te kunnen checken.
Haar wel goed.
Wie hebben we hier?
Ik zit wel even te denken, misschien is het wel even verstandig om over te stappen naar Engels. Want ik zie dat ook al Engelse mensen in de chat hebben. So from now on I'll talk English for all English
solved
people.
it, so we can go if you like. Yeah, and I'm not sure what Kim is doing. Hey. Kim is the only one without an avatar, I see.
Sebastian.
Hi, Christian.
Ik probeer één te maken.
Kim, dan moet je wel uitloggen. Het werkt niet als jij in de software van Groep blijft. Je moet hem linken nog, dus je moet dat via dat uplink dingetje doen.
Nice to meet you too. Ik moet hem even creëren, ik ben er bijna.
Ja, maar je moet wel even uit de VR-applicatie stappen. En je moet hem dan eerst linken nog in die PC-applicatie.
Kom Bastiaan.
En dan moet je opnieuw opstarten.
Hey Christian. Hi, how are you doing?
Okay.
Thanks fine. And you?
I'm fine. It's my first time here in this venue, so I'm
volume a little bit higher.
Trying to getting used to it.
Same here. Interesting.
But he told the people that the first thing that I'm missing is a mirror, just to see what I'm looking like.
Martin Lodewijk.
You look fine.
Yeah. I was told by other people that my avatar was successful, so that's nice. And the second thing is that to find a high chair, I'm sitting on a chair right now. So that's much easier than standing up.
Experience, huh?
Okay, so I'm standing actually.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah, you see some people very low when they are sitting.
Yeah, they haven't calibrated yet. Or not correctly.
For me too. I mean, this is also first time for me.
Interesting. So
I'm doing it. Okay. See, my colleague is in the same room than I am, so I hope you don't hear us double. 2 times.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
No, we can hear you separate. There's no double voice.
Also used for reviews in design teams. And I heard just an application
for the people in the stream, the live stream. If you have any questions,
everyone,
please let me know.
We're starting in about 3 minutes, so you could all head over to the theater and get seated in real life and in VR.
Cool, thanks, Bart. And we go there.
Okay, let's enter the theater.
We gaan zo beginnen, Rolf. Dus blijft iemand van jullie?
Also wenn du den rechten, diesen Stick, also
Great.
nebeneinander setzen. Okay.
Find for a place.
Yes, the smooth animation really does a lot.
Ich bin hier so links von dir.
It's really nice. I will try and capture everything as smooth as possible.
Great. You still look like an angel, so flying around here in a
I do, right? I'm flying around. Everybody in the chat already said that the smooth animations were really nice. So me flying around with the smooth animations.
Yeah.
Hi Maurice.
We ontmoeten elkaar eerder in virtual reality dan in real life.
Probeer er naast je te komen zitten, dat valt nog niet mee.
Dat is goed, hè? Ja. Het geluid is heel goed.
Ik had me al aangemeld, dus
Iedere keer springen we dat wist ik niet. Ik wist het niet.
Leuk.
Onbekende gezichten.
Ja, grappig dit.
Ja,
thuis alles goed?
Zeker.
We gaan elkaar wel een
goede bril op, Jeroen.
Oriënteren naar welke gerichten ik ga maken voor jullie, hè?
Oh ja, kijk ernaar uit.
Hey Dennis.
Benieuwd?
Olaf.
Leuk dat je er bent. Tuurlijk, leuk dat je er bent.
Daar had je een linkje van gestuurd.
Dankjewel.
Daar ga ik mee.
Ik ben benieuwd. Ja, het ziet er wel goed uit, hè?
Ah, lekker man. Leuk.
Het is mooi als het een beetje gevuld is. Het lijkt alsof we heel veel meer kunnen, maar vind ik die ruimte best wel lekker zo.
Maar still many people at outside or?
Ja, ik zie hier
I
nou wel.
think not. I think this is the whole bunch.
Een collega van mij die...
We need to wait for Bart, I guess.
2 weken eerder.
He will give us a green light.
De extents ook, of niet?
Ja, ik zie het broertjes, dat heb je onder.
Ik kan vliegen natuurlijk, dus ik kan even straks
Over aan nadenken. Dus je weet al dat dat iets is wat nog moet gebeuren.
Weet in ieder geval dat ik dan zou zeggen, eerst de branding en daarna de avatars. Dan kan je in ieder geval eerst het event een beetje
Is everybody here?
Kijk.
Do you know if everyone's here?
Yes.
Because Lucas wants to
I think
start.
everyone is here and
We're good to go.
we're about to start.
Okay, cool. Let's go inside.
So I'm heading over. Stefan, you're gonna wait here a bit for the people who are...
I'll come in 5 minutes.
Yeah, you see, the audio is spatial, so if I'm correct, you should have a really nice soundscape. Surround sound. Which really helps in VR a lot, because if you have a spatial audioscape, everybody...
Yeah, is everybody in?
And they can also talk with each other. And we hear them, but not
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We had some little delay, but I think we're going to start with the session. So please, everybody, take a seat. So really, we have some little delay, but I think we'll pick it up because we have some time after the presentations to be in the lobby, so we can discuss there further. My name is Lucas Harbers. I'll be the host today for the Industrial Reality event. We have 2 promising speakers for the event. We have a panel discussion and we can talk about XR. This event has been organized from the Industrial Reality Hub. The Industrial Reality Hub consists of 17 members and knowledge partners and work together on virtual and augmented reality. We organize once a year an event. This is the third time we organize the event, and we also exist 3 years. So we're very happy to organize this event. It will be 3 days. You're here at the first day today. So tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, you can also join us. So maybe it's interesting, 3 different settings. And that's also the program I will announce today. Because the setting up and welcome, we keep it short. We will start in some minutes with Danny van Rij-Rox. He will give an interesting presentation. After that, Simon Amos will give an interesting presentation. Then we will have a panel. The virtual drinks and chat will be afterwards, and we can back to the lobby or outside where also the sun is shining. So, and at 6 o'clock we will stop with a session, but we'll see how it does work. So please, I'd like to warm welcome Danny van Rij-Rox. Danny, can you please step up on the stage? Yes.
I never stepped on the stage that fast. Eh? Did you notice?
Really, you're very sporty, I guess. Thank you very much. You're on a big screen behind you, so
thank you.
Danny, within a half hour, I will give you a signal. Then your time, as always. Yes. Okay. Please, good luck, and I think Bart will step us to the other slide deck. Bart.
Yeah, I think it will be manageable for Danny.
Okay. Now, Danny, good luck. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Lucas. And I'm very proud and honored to have this opportunity to share with you the inside of our company, Walraven, and the use cases we built up the last period of COVID and the last months in 21. So I prepared a small presentation to share with you all the experiences we had in the collaboration with Connect2 these 8 months. So I'm Danny, and within the Walraven Group, I'm responsible for the integrated construction solutions. We are a manufacturer of installation parts, which I will show later. And my responsibility is also to develop modular concepts and products for the building industry. So a short introduction of our company. This is Walraven, but I will skip it because Bart asked me not to share any videos with you. So I just, maybe afterwards I can also share the video on the screen behind me. This company is a very famous family company. It's founded in 42 as a Dutch plumber in a small city in the north of, the south of Amsterdam, near Meidrecht. And we are a solution partner for the installation market. And we supply installers globally all over the world with our products, such as clamps, rails, and installation parts. So this is a short intro of our company. Because I don't know if you're all familiar with the installation industry, so that's why I keep it short and to talk to you about what trends are we facing as a multinational in the installation sector. Well, first of all, we see a change of a workforce. People don't want to work in the construction or installation sector anymore, or people getting older professionally. And also stricter safety measures is what we see in the construction areas and sectors. You're all familiar what happened now in Qatar. More than 6,000 people were killed working in the construction sector. So welcome to our business, I would say. So we see the urge of standardization, standard products, which we can develop in a perfect surrounding in a factory instead on a building plant. Also, we see an urge of digitization. Our customers globally demand a digital design and also a digital twin. So demands are increasing also on this topic. And last but not least, that's what we are facing the last decade, a demand of sustainable products, circular products, etc., etc. So, what is our sector facing? BIM information modeling, and that's not only a 3D, but also more data demands of the end result of a building, a road, a bridge. They also want to see upfront what kind of products they are getting. So virtual reality, as we are here now, is getting a common technique which is used in many sectors, such as installation industry as well. Prefabrication, so not on-site but off-site production, and also using the standard components, creating your 3D model so your customer can see what he is getting. And also a combination between virtual reality and augmented reality is occurring now. Customers demand more digitization, but also more life cycle thinking. It starts with developing a concept which is out of materials, focus on manufacturing, especially lean manufacturing, transportation or deduction of transport costs, retail and usable of products. Are we going to dispose it, or are we going to recycle it or upcycle it? Those are the things we are seeing in our sector, in the building sector and installation sector. So we came up with a modular product, a modular platform for non-residential housing, such as hospitals, schools, offices, universities, industry. And here you see an example of several building blocks recreated with multiple partners. It is a horizontal distribution system which can be used in these buildings. We created a digital content, a product library with more than 70,000 combinations. For us, the value proposition is that with these standardized content, we can create a design very fast. So that's in our interest of our customers. We can show them upfront what kind of products they are getting. We also know the price, the costs of the product, the manufacturing price, installation price, and also the life cycle. Especially in the design phase, there is a lot of saving in this, especially in this phase of creating a digital model for the customer. That's why we're talking about 3D modeling, BIM, and our biggest task is to create digital content where we can deduct the design time for more than 70%. If there is any question, please don't hesitate, because otherwise I feel so alone. For example, here you see a result of a laboratory in the north of Amsterdam, where it only took us a couple of hours to design more than 3,000 square meters design in this office. Especially we call this design for manufacture and assembly. But then you need to create digital content, which is a real digital twin. Also in this design on the left side, on the right side, you see the schedule. So for us, it's the push of the button, and we already know what kind of material, what kind of recipe, and how to start our production. So here you see the real product. Most of you, it's not a common product, but it's most of the time above the ceiling. And what is kind of concept is this? it will supply you with heating, cooling, sprinkler, and cables being used in non-residential housing. So, last but not least, and then we skip to why we are here for. At the end of at production, also when you use standardized content, it's very easy to install this and also come up with different technique and innovative ways of installing products. Here you see an example. In the early days, it took more than 6 persons to install all these functionalities. Actually, this contractor here, he could also be all by himself and install in more than 70% of the time, average time, these so-called modular elements. So at the end, making the design, manufacture, assemble, logistics, and install, that is our total value proposition. But how was this scalable? Well, we used the Connect2 platform to collaborate with students, customers, internally with our partners and my colleagues to come up with brainstorm sessions. Due to COVID, it was very complex to do this in Teams or by Zoom, because most of the time it's a one-way communication. With this working class we did with the Sustainable Development Challenge with the students of the Windersheim of Zwolle, it was very nice to see how fast and flexible also the attendants came up with different solutions. For us, it was amazing. Also, our CEO from Walraven was present to see how innovative this way of collaboration was. So our first use case using this VR platform was a nice and funny way of collaboration. Also, we could show in a digital way our product, our content. And even on this platform, we have a so-called holodeck where people can really feel the product at itself. What you see here. So once you have designed the product, you can also show this upfront without making a sample in a virtual surrounding. You see that all these attendants were able to see the product and also take it apart and rebuild it. This is what we would like to show you with this picture. You can really show in detail what components are being used, and you can also experience by installing some products. Can you imagine we also have a robotized manufacturing part in all over the world, but we could also invite outside people in to advise us what to do with kind of machinery. So the possibilities are huge using VR and AR. And at the end, of course, we came up with our own Walraven tenant. So at this moment, globally, we are using 10 headsets. We came up with an account of Connect2, and we're now working on several use cases. So our HR department is collaborating with new potential employees. We're communicating with colleagues, we're communicating with customers, and we're also developing new use cases, for example, the modular products you saw. So, very short, because I'm a little bit ahead of time, but thank you for this opportunity. And Lucas, I hope maybe there are questions. We can talk afterwards. I can go back in the presentation. I can even, Bart, show them the video if you want me to show it. Otherwise, it's up to you.
Danny, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I think we've got about 10 minutes for questions to your case, and we have afterwards we have a panel discussion, so you can get some questions to the podium at this moment, but you can also keep them for the next session. I see a question. Can you please step up and come to the microphone here in front?
Yes,
You're at the microphone. Yes, everybody can hear you.
Yes, hello. Hi, Danny.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. Really nice to see that you made a lot of progress with using VR in the whole design process. But what I really like to know is how you use the 3D model on the building site itself. Is it still with paper drawings, or can you bring the 3D model to the site?
Yeah. A nice example, we are now working with one of our customers who is building a distribution center of more than 50,000 square meters. We designed this model, and it was really the first time that the customer walked through his own office. Before that, he was used of getting papers and look at the 2D drawing and see, yeah, how does the look and feel of my office is for real. So his remark was, yeah, this virtual design gives me a total different look and feel, and I can also now see more detail of the building, of the design. So I think it's a lot of it's a big added value of showing this to your customer as well. Hope that's
Okay.
the good answer, Rolf.
Yeah, but that's thank you for your answer. But the people who are working on the building, are they ever see the 3D model on site, or how do they know what to do at the job? Did you give them drawings, or?
Well, it depends. I worked for a major contractor, and they're already used of sharing 3D content on the construction site. But they are ahead of time. In the ordinary or the common world, the contractor is not used on the construction site yet to use a 3D model, or at least digitize the way of working. But it's getting there, and my impression is that it will be exponential in the coming period, year, 2-3 years. That is at least my impression.
Thank you.
Oh, so you're just discovering all the possibilities and share it, because I can also imagine it's very handsome within recruitment, getting new employees working with this technology, Danny.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You saw this. I will get the picture. These were the students, and they were amazed once we showed this way of communication. So, and there were international students, so they were not only from the Netherlands, but they were from India, they were from France, etc., etc. So it's maybe last but not least, we also have a competence room within Meidrecht, and we used to travel a lot. But with this technique, there's also a lot of cost savings with air freights and air transportation. It will not only deduct our costs and not fully, because we still need to interact with each other. But this is a new way of collaboration, in our view.
Yeah. And it's also good for the circle. It's also good for the environment, not the flying as
our
much.
footprint.
I see you. Yeah, our footprint. Michel van Eersel, I see you at the microphone stand. Michel, please.
Hi, Danny. Great presentation. I have a small question for you. Can you tell me something more about the engineering software you use for creating BIM models and then putting it into the holodeck you have shown? This. How do you get this on this holodeck? Can you please explain to us?
Yeah, I can do it myself. It's very simple. We use the GLTF converter. So straight from Revit content, we could upload by the export of GLTF to the holodeck. And I now have my own folders within the Connect2 platform, which I can share live with all the tenants here present. But not only the model, but even a whole building we can upload on the holodeck. It is still improving, because you can't show a real hospital for the whole building, but just you can take parts of the design and show that to the present people who are here. So actually, Michel, it was very simple using this GLTF exporter to import digital content on the holodeck platform of Connect2.
So thank you, Daniel. So I've got one question from Bart. I think it will be a small question and a quick answer. Then we go on with the program. But Bart,
it's never small and quick. So this is a more philosophical question. So of course you've been telling how VR AR can be used, in the process of collaborating and designing and building. When do you think, and will it be something that will have a major impact on how we actually design buildings before this technology starts taking over? And what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, there will be, but it's getting more technical now. But there will be demands out of our governments, which started a couple of years ago in the UK. There was the government who was demanding a 3D model with a certain level of detail. So I'm convinced that in the near future, customer will demand a level of detail of digitization. Also, not only on your content part, but also on the collaboration part. People want to see upfront what they're getting, what will be the life cycle analysis of the products, etc., etc. So this technique will have, in my view, will have a major impact on how we are going to develop products in the construction sector.
Danny, thank you very much for your clear answers and your presentation. I will ask you to sit back on the chair. Yeah, can we applaud with his hands, or it's without noise? I think it's yes. Okay, thank you very much. it's also a test. I think we will continue with the presentation of Simon. But yeah, you're helping me with the screen.
Do you want to show him up front?
Yeah, let's have a little introduction with Simon Amos, a digital workplace consultant at Deloitte UK. Thank you for traveling to the Netherlands today, Simon.
Indeed, my pleasure.
I will give you the podium. I will sit down there, and please take us with your story. Yes?
Cool, thank you. All right.
Okay.
And thanks as well, Danny. I think it was really interesting for me to see that you're actually using VR in your talent acquisition process as well, because something we've been looking at. So yeah, very excited to see that. So hi everyone, I'm Simon Ames from our digital workplace practice at Deloitte UK. One of the major things that we do at Deloitte is of course consulting as a professional services firm. So we're always looking at what are the upcoming trends and how are they going to impact the way that we work. Just before we started though, I just wanted to get a little feel for the audience. Who here already is a, let's say, XR practitioner? So you work and specialize in VR or AR, something along those lines. Could you just raise your hand if you do? Okay, we're looking at about half. Okay, great. And then for the remainder of you, who works in architecture, engineering, or construction, those sort of industries? Okay, right. So interesting. So we've got a bit of a mixed audience. So I do hope that what I'm running over today will be interesting for you. The focus, I think, that I really want to kind of hone in on is the change that we've seen to kind of our ways of working through the pandemic. This is not really a new change, but certainly something that's been accelerated. So I'll be talking quite a lot about kind of the way that information workers are going to be changing the way they approach work. And I think before jumping straight into XR or perhaps more specifically VR, I'm just going to talk about, those trends that we've seen that we see as drivers for XR and a reason why we might want to start exploring XR a bit more closely. Okay. So as a member of our digital workplace group, we are really considering about how the way we do work changes. So for a long time, the workplace was, of course, considered to be the office. That was it. And then slowly, as we implemented more tools, more applications into how we work, that has changed. I think it became a bit muddy. And then now, of course, with the pandemic, the workplace itself is, of course, our bedrooms or our kitchens or home offices. So, the digital workplace is more relevant now than ever. All right. And throughout the last several years, we've been doing tech trends reports where we've looked at what are the kind of upcoming trends. We just very recently published one called, and one of those sections was Rebooting the Digital Workplace. And this identified that, of course, as organizations manage a growing number of offsite employees working from home and other non-traditional workspaces, that many are beginning to accept the inevitability of the digital workplace. And where work is completed by a mix of on-site and off-site employees that essentially have to work together. I think that's just one thing I want to stress is that throughout the COVID pandemic, I think some people saw this as a temporary change, and that some of the challenges we've had around remote work will perhaps fade as we go back into the office. But of course, you've probably seen a few headlines around the hybrid model and how we're going to be working some days at home, some days in the office. And we're going to have to figure out, again, how we collaborate again. So it's no longer is it everyone in the office or everyone at home. We've got some new challenges now that we're in this kind of blended model. So to look at the actual data, prior to the pandemic in 2019, roughly 15% of all workers were virtual, so working from home or other alternative locations. Now we're at roughly 50%, perhaps a little bit less than a lot of people expect. I think we throw around 80 or 90% as the assumption, but naturally there's so many roles that simply can't go virtual and can't go remote, and that's consideration as well. But I think what's more interesting is the actual reception to that. So roughly 60% of those that were surveyed of having recently moved to remote work said that they have a better work-life balance. And we actually expect that as the pandemic passes, that will improve even further. And the idea being that right now, as we have to look after children, things like that, that's affecting our well-being as well. But I think the really good statistic here is the 74% respondents that said they'd like to continue remote work as the restrictions eased. Now, that said, just because those that are working from home want to continue working from home doesn't necessarily mean that those that are making those decisions will feel the same. But we've certainly seen that very recently. If we look at Apple, this is a headline just from this last week. Internal memo was leaked where a very large number of staff were not too pleased about a recent announcement that their leadership made, which was that when the pandemic restrictions were eased, they'd be going to a 3-day in the office model, which for many might seem good because previously they were on a 5-day work week and they've now gone to 3 days in the office. But actually, employees at Apple said, well, we can do our job effectively if we're fully remote. So why exactly would we necessarily want to go into the office? And I would stress that that's, of course, not all employees at Apple, but it was, a fair portion of them. So what's happening now is that leaders and, organizations are having to face this reality of, do we try and take a hard stance on people coming to the office and risk ruining the experience for those that do their best work at home? And if they make that decision, then they are, of course, taking a risk of, am I going to lose some of my best talent who no longer want to work in my organization? Or perhaps the talent I wanted to recruit will look elsewhere because they want that flexible working. I'd also point to the graph in the very top right here. This is from Gartner, and this showed that actually this was the work preferences that we had in 2019 versus 2020. In 2019, only 37% of people actually said, I want to work majority flexible. I want to work a lot of my time at home. We thought the office was a better environment. Suddenly, in 2020, our perceptions have changed. It's now 64%. So this is a very real thing that we can't, really avoid or expect to go away. So we have an opportunity now to, rethink how it is that we have our digital interactions and also our physical interactions, and consider what the best balance is. So already we've seen that real estate is changing. We're looking at our offices and saying the spaces that we have allocated for desks and regular working, can we just scrap those? Can we get rid of a bunch of our desks and create new spaces of collaboration? I think that's a great step to try and really optimize that use of when you are in the office, making best use of that time. But unfortunately, it's not really the only answer, particularly because that requires your whole team being in that space at the same time to have that shared experience. And even if you, let's say, go to your team and you say, look, let's all go in on Wednesday and try and be there. The problem is you may have people in your team that are fully remote, if that's what policy says. You may have some which they've already been in the office 4 days that week, and that was the day that they were planning to have off. So we're just going to have this, very difficult dynamic as we try and balance that. Okay. And kind of, I guess, moving on a little bit from the employee expectations, thinking about some of the concerns that leaders have had throughout this phase of remote work. So we've been surveying a lot of C-suite level executives to find out what their main concerns were, and I've kind of grouped these. So whilst we haven't jumped into virtual reality and collaboration in VR, kind of like we're doing right now, I would like you to think a little bit as I go through these about how they might be addressed by this type of experience that we're in right now. So the first one was productivity, and the initial concerns that we heard was that the distractions of being at home and the lack of supervision from managers might impede collaboration and kind of reduce overall levels of productivity. Little spoiler, but that isn't necessarily what we actually saw. So not really something that we are looking to address. And also, but on top of that, that the absence of FaceTime and kind of line of sight from managers will make it very hard to measure how well a team is performing, which again, we found wasn't necessarily the case. And what we are still thinking are very realistic concerns that we need to address is this idea of this lack of social support by essentially not being able to have that face-to-face casual communication with your team and build those relationships, which might lead to some people feeling dissatisfied in their roles. And if we take that further and do a deep dive into it, we also kind of identified that the strong existing relationships that we have today, or perhaps we had before the pandemic began, generally are likely to continue even as you go into remote work. The problem is the relationships that are a bit weaker certainly start to erode with time. And then the really large challenge is as you bring new people into the organization, they don't have that opportunity to develop those relationships in the same way. So how can we develop a deeper connection with our colleagues, even when we're remote? As far as development and learning goes, it's relatively simple. It's just, would it not be challenging for workers to virtually develop if they can't attend the usual training that they would have done prior? And for those that want to advance in the organization, how do they maintain those professional networks? How do they meet new people? Perhaps you're passing the director of your particular business unit. You may have had a conversation with them in the past. Now we're in the virtual world. You're not going to get to have those same types of conversations. And if you do, if you go out your way to arrange, let's say, some Zoom chats, coffee chats, like perhaps we've been doing in Deloitte, works, it certainly does, but it's not quite as organic, so it doesn't always have the same impact. And speaking of those organic encounters, we finally have the impact on innovation, which is a really difficult one to actually put data behind. But certainly there's been this very large concern around a loss of what we're calling serendipity. And all that refers to is when you're going through an office, offices nowadays are designed to try and actually encourage you to bump into other people so that you can have those casual conversations. And maybe those conversations kick off a good idea that results in a new proposition for the business that generates value. That isn't actually too often the case. What it does do is certainly helps us build better relationships and trust with our colleagues that then can lead on to those follow-on conversations. Okay. So I spoke before about the productivity and said that we didn't find that productivity went down. I would like to clarify that it wasn't just that they didn't go down, but what we found is that productivity actually went up through the pandemic. And a skeptic would probably say that that's because we've been working twice as hard. And there has been a fairly considerable well-being crisis of people that are working additional hours and putting in the extra time to try and get the same level of work done. But that's not necessarily always the case. We actually found that it was because when it came to management, that managers were quite well connected through data. They could see the way that people were working through their kind of, I guess, digital workplace exhaust. So as they do work, they see that work being passed around the organization a bit more clearly. Just looking at someone working doesn't really give you that kind of feedback. And then also, as we think about the new kind of tools that are emerging, there is better ways to see, work that's being performed in the organization. And we've also had just a great opportunity to optimize. When we're in the office, we didn't really think about optimizing our digital work. Now we've started to improve our processes and kind of redesign them so that we can do this type of work better. Okay. And that said, I don't want to make out like it's all a perfect picture and that remote work is actually 100%. We're great. We're there. Actually, if you look at this this study that was conducted by Leesman, is a fantastic study that used data that they've been tracking for years. It had about 22,000 respondents. They found that yes, the employee experience for those that were in more individual roles went up considerably, and people reported that they felt better working at home. but actually still for those that do collaborative work or are highly collaborative, that they struggle to perhaps perform their roles quite as well when they were at home, which I think is quite clear. But what's really interesting when you look at this is that even if we think the home working environment is better, there's still around 40–50% of people that you find it worse. So clearly we haven't reached that optimal solution, that optimal working from home, I guess, paradigm where we really feel like we're fully enabled. Okay. And when we think about why that is, when we look at the tools that we have today, stuff like Zoom, Slack, Teams, they're really embedded into what we do. They do work quite well, and they're surprisingly adaptable. But the problem is, I think, as Danny mentioned before, they just require a lot of effort to set up. They can be a bit complex. And if you think about, let's say, running a workshop over Zoom, it doesn't really work because you don't have the level of control over audio. You have one person speaking at a time. And there is ways to get around that, which we've been employing, stuff like making use of the breakout rooms. But again, because it's not this organic atmosphere, because people aren't splitting off into conversations they need to, you have to put a lot of extra effort in as a host to make sure that people stay engaged and actually contribute to the discussion, which can be very challenging. And then the final one is we spoke about the well-being connectedness, and bringing that back. Again, this is a great example. Before we started, all of you were having your chats sat alongside each other, and there was a very positive atmosphere. I think it was, the excitement of actually feeling like you're stood across from someone. That's something that we really struggle to emulate if we're over just simply a webcam, which often we don't even bother to use. So clearly there is a limitation that in our tools that don't quite meet our requirements. So just before we move on to VR then, to bring that back together, so active collaboration just isn't quite great in the remote world, even if our regular productivity does quite well. We know that these challenges aren't going to go away, even as we move out of the pandemic. The hybrid model will probably make things more complex. And then also, tools right now are still not seen as being the best they can be, because we still seem to put the office at a higher position. But there's so much variety in organization that we need to be flexible. And in order to be flexible, we need to look at some new options for how our people collaborate and stay connected. Okay. So this is where I think immersive technologies has a really interesting place, and we certainly wouldn't suggest that it will fix all of our problems, but the unique option that it gives us to bring people together and allow us to share a digital space like a physical space, where we actually can stand alongside each other, that isn't something that really any other technology offers. So it's hard to actually look at the alternatives. Even if we look at stuff like Mural and Miro for whiteboarding, again, they just lack that sense of presence, which is quite a special thing with immersive technologies. So thinking about, as we start to try and form a business case for why we might want to invest in immersive, we have to look at what are the actual benefits to the business. Even before the pandemic, there were some pretty clear benefits that were being pushed. That's why there has been vendors in the space for quite a few years, particularly focused on reducing business travel costs for those international travel, even travel in the same country. That, of course, has an environmental benefit, very clear. We've seen accelerated product cycles. So if you're developing a product, you want to do a quick review, it's much more powerful to see it within VR and sometimes even create something in VR. And you get a sense for, let's say you're designing a store, or you're designing a shoe, or if it's an industrial context, you're designing something like Danny showed where you've got your product actually in a space. It certainly helps a lot with that development process. And of course, that counts the visualization as well. And then a very special one, which I'm sure the speakers tomorrow will speak about, is that access to experiential learning. So experiential learning is very expensive, sometimes very disruptive. If you want to bring people on site, that is sometimes it's something you don't have an option to do. Whereas with VR, you can put someone in an immersive environment and they can live that experience. And generally, the outcomes are much better. So that's great. And then I said I'm speaking about VR here, but I did want to give a little nod to augmented reality, particularly as this is about industrialization. So access to the specialist workforce. Danny spoke about the fact that a lot of the workforce is aging at the moment, and it's a genuine challenge about how we can maintain those skills and take some of the newer workers to perhaps perform roles that are above their current level of training. And a very important way of how you do that is with augmented reality, by allowing a specialist anywhere in the world to essentially see what that person is seeing and give them advice as they do their work, and perhaps guide them on how to interact with a piece of machinery or something like that. Okay. Then as far as the emergent benefits go, though, this is, I think, again, what we're most excited about. It's about maintaining that connectedness. Culture is one that we don't normally talk about. We think about our regular meetings where we just want to feel more connected to people, but actually, as a business leader, how would you make sure if everyone's working remotely that your new joiners still feel like they're part of something unique and they get to build those relationships and feel like they're part of that organization? Larger event space, this is again a great example, very normally expensive, but also it's about bringing people from different parts of the world together very quickly without any kind of friction. And then the very special part, which you know, Danny, we just have a conversation about, is the spatial audio. So the fact that I can be stood here and it will dynamically update so you can all hear me. But if I were to go into a different room, you wouldn't hear me. That allows us to have those more natural conversations, run workshops, do a lot more things. Okay. And the very special one, of course, being remote engagement, which I'll get into a bit more detail in a second. So what we are really interested in is the at-scale deployments of virtual reality. I think what we've got up here on screen at the moment are the ones which are very well proven. And there's a lot of data on their benefits. There's studies that have been done in academia or as well as by organizations that say if you do you know, your regular training, that there's better learning outcomes. If you do product design, it generally works well. If you're designing a building, being able to actually go into that building is you know, it's a very tiny cost compared to the cost of building that building. It's something that you're going to want to do. Remote assist as well, the return on investment for those augmented reality headsets is quite quick. It can be between 6 to 8 months. So they're all very clear use cases which pull these capabilities, which I don't necessarily need to convince you on. That said, we think about the future possibilities. The at-scale implementations that we would like to imagine, where everyone has a headset and we can all go and work wherever we want, and then we can hop into a space like this instantly, they weren't really possible until within the last 2 years, and I guess became very possible in the last year with the, you know, the emergence of some new headsets from Oculus, from HTC, and from Pico. The reason for that was, of course, that before you had to have this very expensive PC, you had to have a headset that was also much more expensive, had to be plugged in. That just wasn't an option for enterprise. We couldn't look at that for an at-scale deployment. So certainly speaking in Deloitte, it wasn't an option for the way that our people work, and we didn't have those types of workstations in our buildings. Now you've got these fully self-contained devices, and that makes things very interesting. So it enables the remote collaboration use case, something which you could have done with a small number of headsets, but becomes much better at scale for your meetings, for your labs, even one-to-ones. I've been doing all of my one-to-ones within my team in VR, which is certainly more personal. And it also actually brings the training to the next level. So whereas we've been trying to do our training in Zoom throughout the pandemic, it does work actually. But this allows you to deliver those similar types of classroom training in, again, a more engaging fashion. Events like this, and then I think I've added a couple of extra ones here on the bottom, and I think that's because I'd want to stress that for us, again, the business case for virtual reality is not hinging on a single use case. You wouldn't want to go and give a headset to a lot of people in your organization just so that they could do a single event, or so they could do just one meeting. It doesn't really have that return on investment. If you want to take that step, you're looking at how can I empower my people with as many different capabilities as possible, and that's why we start thinking about, is there well-being experiences, is there extra social experience that they can do, can we take our, let's say, e-learning, the stuff that you normally give to your whole organization, like diversity inclusion, things like that, and can we translate that into a virtual environment that's more effective? So to summarize what the goals are, the overall goal is to improve the experience for employees, to give them more flexibility, to maintain your culture, and to keep people connected. But I think I guess the tactical goal of when you're in each individual meeting, it's about increasing engagement, making sure that people still feel, I guess, present. Now, credit to Charlie Fink, who is a really great speaker in the XR space. He summarized this in the best possible way I can imagine, which is presence plus agency equals engagement. So why is VR and virtual collaboration better than Zoom? It's because you feel present, you actually feel like you're in the space alongside the people that you're engaging with, and very importantly, you have the agency to actually do what you want. So you aren't a passive contributor. You can move to that space. You can go up to that person, talk to them. You can go up to that mic, and you can actually get involved, or you can pick up that pen and do something. And the fact that you have that certain level of freedom and autonomy, that's what allows you to feel more engaged. Okay, and so just to finish off, so a few challenges that we have identified for ourselves as far as being a business case, but also for the industry, and then some of our learnings from the pilot activity that we've been up to. So firstly, trying to roll out virtual reality devices or even augmented reality devices to a large group is so difficult because it is essentially a brand new install base. You aren't saying, let's refresh our mobiles, let's refresh our laptops. You're trying to convince your senior stakeholders that this is a brand new capability that we need to deploy and then maintain for the next 5-10 years, or even the ongoing future, and we're gonna have to refresh that. So it's a completely different type of conversation. Also, of course, VR and AR are just simply too difficult to fully appreciate without experiencing them. If you try and explain it to someone when they are in it, I apologies to our live stream audience, then it can be very challenging. And then also headsets benefit from network effects. So if you want to start small, that's okay, but you'll never demonstrate the full benefits perhaps of the collaborative opportunities until you start to roll out to a larger and larger audience, which again, it can be quite a hard sell sometimes. And then finally, it's that if we want to do training or we want to do the AEC kind of use cases with visualization, again, that's well proven. You can build a benefits case. But if you're trying to build a benefits case for collaboration, it's just a very new trend at the moment. So it's hard to find the actual data to support it. And that's why it's important to do your own kind of mini deployment to collect data from your own users as well. Okay. So there's a couple of technical challenges. One is a simple one, it's around headset performance. As you probably heard Bart mention, there's around, I think, up to 40, 50 people that can fit in this space. Right now we're about 35, which is great. It's a fantastic start. Obviously, especially in the event space, it's nice to have more. And if we start thinking about those water cooler moments where we want people to bump into each other, it would be a fantastic scenario where you could have 5 or 6 different teams in one space in different rooms that could be collaborating on different tasks, and they happen to cross paths. We're not there yet on the technology. Of course, there's also issues of cost and comfort, but that's constantly improving. And the one challenge is that headset prices, they did a massive jump down when we got rid of the PCs, but they aren't really going down now because the technology is already kind of very competitively priced. Integration is a massive challenge. So great, I can come in here and I can present. That's a unique kind of scenario. But what if I want to do my regular workflows? What if I need to put up that Excel document, or what if I need to refer to that software where I've got a something that I particularly want to show, which is contained in, let's say, Office 365 or Google Workspace? How do I get that into an environment like this? It's possible, but sometimes that friction can be it can hold people back. So you have to think carefully about what particular processes you're using this technology for. And then the final thing, I think, is more about how we actually deploy this. So generally speaking, most individuals don't just sit in a self-isolated team. They work with other teams as well. And those processes are continuously overlapping. So let's say I give this to 50 people in one team. The fact that those 50 people probably work with 200 other people means you're going to exclude some people, and it can be very difficult. Now, the standard answer for that is, let's get a application that is cross-compatible. So you can get desktop users in, they can interact with the virtual participants. That works, it really does, but it doesn't really solve all the experience issues. It's kind of similar to back when we were in the office, when you had someone, 1 or 2 people on the call, those people on the call couldn't really fully engage with the people that were in the office. It is a half step, but until you have that larger rollout, it can be quite challenging. And then I think the thing I really don't want people to underestimate is the change curve. So I think we all know that a lot of technology deployments fail because users don't want to adopt that technology, even if the benefits are there. That change journey is really important. That's doubly important for technologies like this, where there is no prior experience. You've got a lot of false expectations you have to kind of overcome. So, is it actually for work? You read news articles about gaming, about entertainment. There's that question of, can I actually use this for, my day-to-day role? A really big one is the building people's confidence and face the unfamiliar. It's essentially, if someone feels really, really good at doing their role using their current technology, they're naturally not going to want to necessarily go to something where they may struggle. And then also stuff like getting used to controllers to move around. And a lot of the things that we're used to in the 2D interface doesn't translate into the 3D world. So making sure that you really give people that extra level of support to so that they don't have a kind of a negative experience. Then I've got at the bottom here as well stuff about comfort, accounting people with glasses, and of course motion sickness. What I would say for those that are worried about the motion sickness case is that for those of you, especially in the environment, the apps that are designed for professional use generally avoid those unintentional movements. So motion sickness is generally a little bit less of a concern in the professional context. Okay, and just to finish up, so these are our very personal learnings. One is just don't rely on the idea of XR. Always try and show rather than tell. If you're trying to scale up virtual reality or even augmented reality in the organization, make sure that you put some of your budget into getting demo headsets. They should not all be headsets that go to your users. You need to have headsets that you can send out to that leader, that you can send out to perhaps that client, and that they can then try it for themselves and you can meet them in virtual reality. It makes a really big difference for winning people over. Loads of extra care into the onboarding experience. We even went so far as to have office hours every day where people could come in and have a one-to-one kind of bit of support. Just make sure that onboarding experience is as perfect as it can be, because if people have a poor starting experience, their perception of the technology will last. It really does last. So if it's great, then they'll go and they'll shout about it because they've had a great time. More than with any other technology, because it's quite, it's quite novel, it's quite new. But if it doesn't go well, then they will probably not let that go for quite some time. And then as far as actual tracking benefits, if you really want to be able to scale this up, of course, there needs to be some degree of benefits tracking. And I think what we've seen a lot of those in the industry do is focus purely on sentiment. Did you like using this technology for your workshop or for your meeting? That is useful. You still need that type of data, but you also need to really focus on what's called post-adoption behavior. So are those people continuing to do the same things in VR that they were doing a month ago? Are they looking to do further things without us telling them to do so? Because if people are slowly starting to drop it, you really need to be asking why. It may not be the fault of the technology. There may be other change things that need to be done, but it's important to identify those behaviors. And then the final thing is, of course, push for an MVP. I think this is clear with any technology, minimal viable product, get something simple out there, you can start testing. But in this case, it's doubly important because it can be very hard when you start looking at a larger business pilot to retract some of the, I guess, perceptions that technology builds up and to look after those users with the level of care that you need. It's really helpful if you build some champions first, you really come to understand the technology and also understand how your individual business reacts to the technology, because we've certainly found that not just in Deloitte in general, but our different parts of the business have all very different reactions. So we've had to really focus on getting that feedback. The final thing, of course, is that it gives you the option to develop that capability, understand how you deploy XR more easily in a very low risk environment, which is very beneficial. Okay, so that was everything from me. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it's been useful. If you do have any questions at all about how you get started to organization, or for those of you that said you're already involved with virtual reality or augmented reality and you're looking to perhaps to scale up, then feel free to reach out to myself and the Digital Workplace team. Details are, of course, there. And yeah, thanks again, Bart and the Connect2 team for having me.
Right. Simon, thank you very much. A little applause for your presentation. It's really interesting, especially the HR component. You're working with this kind of technology. How many years are you working with XR?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, so we've been experimenting with XR, I think, since the initial kind of, I guess, boom, you could say, in 2016. But we were never really trying to embed it into our, our regular ways of working. We were doing a fair bit around training experiences, but we weren't really looking at the collaboration experiences because we didn't feel like it was quite there as of yet. I do think it's really, since the pandemic kicked off, that we've been starting to look a lot more closely at this collaborative use case, because we think that the risk is higher, but the potential impact is also quite massive. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it's interesting. And also, I think you're a big international organization. So I was wondering, I've got some experience here in the Netherlands or within Europe, but does it work different within the world? Are there other cultures quick enhancing this technology? Or
that's actually a really interesting question. Yeah, so we've run different pilots in the US, UK, I think one in Spain as well. And I got to be honest, that's well, we haven't done any sort of different cut of the data or thought about how it's different in different cultures. I think probably the part of that reason is because we looked at different working groups, so that would also be a factor. Sorry, I simply don't know. I would hazard to say that probably culture is definitely a factor, but probably not as large a factor as the internal culture of the organization itself, rather than perhaps the local culture of the people from that country.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. I look at the audience. Are there anyone having a question for Simon? And please step up, get to the microphone.
I think we saw a couple over on the left over there.
Yeah.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi there.
So I have a question. So I would bring this up to our IT department. They might not like the fact that currently I'm using an Oculus Quest device. So you basically have an Android device using a Facebook bound account. So like from a security perspective, if I want to have meetings with sensitive content, for example, can I really, what would I tell my manager about this?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I think it comes up a fair bit, particularly in the Facebook context, whether that's warranted or not. I think the main thing that I would say is that there is more options on the market now, literally within the last couple of months, than there were about a year ago. So the Quest 2 is, of course, what I imagine the majority of people are using, because they really did step up the level of those standalone devices. But actually now HTC have released their alternative device. It's managed slightly differently, same with Pico. There's not really consideration on Facebook. But also, there is different ways to use device management on those devices. So Facebook, they opt for their own device management software. So that may be a hesitation. But if you still wanted to deliver on those use cases, and you looked at, I think Pico as well, but certainly HTC, they allow you to use pretty much any MDM, or at least there's a long list, I think, of like 6 to 8. So there's different ways to secure those devices. If you were also looking at devices that weren't standalone, so you were willing to tether them to a computer, I think HTC has got some unique deployment methods which never touch the internet, and they are purely your own software that's running and stuff like that. So there is more secure ways to do it and approach it.
Okay. See, so did I get that right? There are even possibilities to make my Quest 2 more secure with some tricks, or?
I wouldn't. Well, it depends. So, if you don't mind me asking, is your Quest 2 a personal device, or is it one that's a kind of Oculus for Business version?
Oh no, it's my private personal device.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's 2 versions actually of the Quest 2. So there's the consumer version, which has got a slightly different privacy policy, and then Facebook also has a slightly more expensive offering, which is the same hardware, same exact device, but it comes with their mobile device management software as well, and that's got a very separate set of policies associated with it. So I would like to say is much more secure and is very secure. Of course, as I said, there's the other alternatives you can look at as well. But would you be able to take your device right now and make it more secure? No. If your organization wanted to issue with a work version of the Oculus Quest 2, that would be certainly more secure.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. Thanks a lot.
Bastian, maybe you can stand, because I think, Danny, will you come up to the stage? I saw you wave. Maybe you've got some experience on that way also. And then we'll start the panel.
Bastian,
so, please.
I can say it was a very good question, Bastian. That was also our first major question. What will happen with sharing the data? So we came up with a solution. Actually, Connect2 came up with a solution of this big business edition of Oculus Quest 2. So it is more expensive, but since we are a multinational and would like to work globally, we're also very protective about our data. So your question is a very important one, and this is how at least we solved it by buying this business devices. And also with support of Connect2, we need to be aware to secure our data. If we are, and that was also my question to Simon, as an additional question to you, Bastian. What do you think? What will happen with sharing all the data in the future, Simon? When we have our personal device or our business device, and also with the connection part. Luckily, it looks that all the connections are being secured today and nobody dropped out. but I had some experience when we went to customers and we used their Wi-Fi connections. So what do you think, Simon, what will occur in the future? How can we solve these questions?
There's a few questions there, Danny. I think so. To answer your first question around the management of data, I think if we take the personal device to one side, that's why I stressed integrations before. There is some extra steps that need to go before managing data becomes easier amongst your work laptop, phone, and your headset. I would also stress that the personal consumer devices are a fine starting point to exploring the technology. And also for some use cases, they're great. So if you just want to get as many people in the organization that happen to have VR into an event space, then that's fine if they use their personal device, as long as what you're discussing isn't too sensitive. If you genuinely want to look at VR at scale, you really should be looking at a proper business-focused managed device. And that's not just because of security, it's because you have a better control over the experience that way. So if someone is procuring so if they're installing the applications that your organization has basically arranged for them, it's a lot easier if you, as the employer, push those applications onto the headset, so when they receive it, it's ready to go. Or if there's a new application, you can add it. It's just a generally better control over the experience, especially when you start looking at stuff like training and not just collaboration. It's nice to be able to launch stuff for people and just manage the experience better. As far as the question of connectivity goes, it's a challenge. I think Wi-Fi will always be a bit of a challenge, especially when you go to a client site where they have a very locked down Wi-Fi. That it's one thing to consider. We are really interested in, this is more of a future trend, how 5G is going to impact XR. So that gets thrown around a lot. But this idea of having devices which have a direct 5G connection, I think Pico's new device can have a direct 5G connection, whereas I don't believe the Oculus Quest 2 nor the HTC can. But if you wanted to be able to have a 5G connection on the move, that's an option. And also in the future, that should allow us to directly stream experiences to a device, which are perhaps a little bit harder to run than what the device itself is capable of. So not something that we can do right now, Danny, but certainly something that we're expecting to be addressed in the near future.
So, Bastian, is that an answer to your question?
Yes, so great. Thanks a lot. Learned a lot of new stuff.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Is there any others? I think I spotted one maybe around there before. I'm not sure it was an itch or any other questions? Okay. Well,
I've got one question. Wait, Bart, you're on. Yes.
First of all, Simon, I would like to thank you for this impressive presentation. A lot of good insights here, and more of a overall perspective of things they're headed. So interesting to see all these digits. When you were asked to join this team, were you skeptical yourself, or were you already fully on board? How was everybody in the team? Just to get a sense, are you guys now all focused on knowing, oh yeah, this is going to grow over time, or is it still difficult? The first period you started off as this team, or?
So by that I assume you mean our kind of immersive capability, and kind of kicking off, like, why do we start looking at VR? Was I skeptical of that? And augmented reality as well, of course. The answer is yes. Of course I was skeptical. I had personally my own virtual reality device back in 2016. It was one of the original VR devices. I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it, but to be honest with you, I just ended up having to pack it up based on where I was living, and I didn't think it was a work-ready device because the what's called screen door effect, so I guess that the pixels on the screen was quite poor. So you couldn't read text, you couldn't really see stuff in the distance, and it kind of slightly ruined the immersion. But particularly the text point, it just didn't feel like a work-ready device. So when the essentially a few months prior to the Quest 2, we had obviously heard about the standalone devices and thought this is something we should be looking at as a potential future trend, not something that we would want to necessarily push on. We were really pleasantly surprised with the experience. I think we already knew that virtual reality was quite immersive, but the improvements to comfort and I guess overall scale and portability, all those types of things, it was better than we were expecting. So yes, came in with a skeptical mind, but were very pleased with what we saw. And I think that's also why I stressed before that it's so important to get headsets into the hands of the people that you're trying to demonstrate the technology to, which can be very difficult in the pandemic. And of course, hopefully will become a bit easier as the pandemic kind of subsides, but it is so important to show rather than tell. I hope that answers your question about.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Simon.
You're welcome. Okay, just do a final check of any questions. Okay, great. Well,
Simon, I've got one question myself. Wait.
We got two questions.
Michel first.
Simon.
Michel.
You're now at your home address or in your office, I guess?
Yes, I'm at my home address, yeah.
Is it to give a presentation here on a virtual stage on this audience? Can you please, what is your experience?
It's pretty great, yeah. I think I remember the first time that my team got together in VR. I was very excited about it, but I'd kind of tried VR, before, so it was still novel to me, but it wasn't anything, truly like wow. I know my director came in and joined us, and he was very taken aback by it, and just I guess that's the reaction for a lot of people. This is definitely a new experience for me. I've done a lot of meetings in VR. I've not done an event in VR, and yeah, it feels great. It's really lovely to be able to, I guess, look at people. So I don't know about you, but I've delivered so many presentations over Zoom this last kind of couple of years, or at least I guess last year, I should say. And it's so hard to connect with anyone. And even right now, I can't necessarily see people's facial expressions, but just kind of knowing that I can look at them in the eyes, it makes it a lot easier to present. So yeah, it's been a great experience. Very interesting question, that one. Appreciate it. And Lucas, I think you had a question as well in mind.
Yeah, I just one thing I was thinking about, because there was something about data and using the device personal and in a business way. But I was thinking, did we have that wave also 6 years ago with our mobile phones? Because there's also something between making pictures personal, but also have your business email on the phone. So is it really another league, or can it be copied for business purpose?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think so. The mobile phone question is a hard one, because we've still not come to an answer on mobile phones. So if some organizations, they go for a bring your own device model, and then you kind of part manage it. Some of them don't even care too much about managing it. Others go for a work device. Everyone gets issued one, and you have that separate to your personal phone. There's not really a clear answer there, because, well, a lot of organizations haven't thought about what is the actual experience we want to deliver, and why are we perhaps necessarily doing that. Often it can be quite a quick decision. I think with VR, it's a really good question, because the question is, do you want to try and beat the consumer headset growth because you think there's business value there, or are you going to move into this space after the consumer headset kind of area grows, right? Because if most organizations got headsets already, maybe you want to just use what's available. Honestly, I don't know what the exact answer will be. I am a little bit concerned around the current consumer offering, not offering that level of security, as has been already expressed. But again, it always comes down to what are your requirements, what's your use case. So if you just want to do events, and you just want to do perhaps social stuff, it's okay as long as no data's touching it, but you're always going to be limited. We're not there yet where there's an option to manage a personal device. That's not something Facebook seems interested in offering. It's not something that I've heard about from the other competitors, because they're not in the consumer space, they're in the enterprise space. We'll have to see. It could be some time, but maybe there'll be new models in future.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think maybe it's good, Danny, to step on the podium, because then we can have the last 5 minutes for the final questions. It's a sort of a panel discussion, or maybe you've got some questions for the audience if no one steps up at the microphone. So do you want to share something or ask back? And then we're in a...
Yeah, I'll give it some thought. I am very much looking forward to talking with you all after this, so I can hear a little bit more about what it is that you're up to at the moment. I guess I'd love to hear about how you heard about this event, why you're at this event. I guess what you were looking to get from it, because I think everyone has a different interest in XR, and I would love to hear how the industry is thinking at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Simon. And Danny, do you have any questions to the audience or a last call?
Yes, I am very interested to know if this audience was present the whole time, or did you had a sneak go out and get a coffee or a drink? can you raise your hand if you are out for a couple of minutes? Because
that's a cheeky question, Danny.
I can imagine that you will also do this in real time. What my experience was with Zoom and Teams, that people shut off their video. That gave me the impression that they were out. But now with your Oculus on, I couldn't see if you were really present, yes or no.
That's interesting.
Yes, this was interesting. I was a couple of minutes out of the venue because of my headset crashed. So I picked up.
Thank you for coming back.
I picked another Quest headset. Must install the app and re-logged on. So that's one of the problems, I think. How do you manage the headsets, and how can you convince a lot of people and older people? I'm 64, gray hair, but I say I'm 30 years too early born. So
you're 30 years more experienced, Peter. You should bring it another way. Yes.
Yeah, that's so. That's a lot of experience. But I've seen a lot of people of my age. They don't want to have a headset, wearing a headset. I demonstrate to everybody around me, and therefore I had a lot of headsets to show what VR is. Then the most people, they don't have headsets. They don't know anything about VR. So difficult.
And
I think the most people here are much younger than me. That it's easy to set up a headset with all the problems you are involved.
Well, Piet, may I answer this question, Simon?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Danny. Sure.
It was a sad story, but my parents-in-law, they are 90 years old and 85. And due Christmas, they got Corona. They survived, so at least they were okay. But once we implemented this VR or XR experience, my mother-in-law is 90 years old. And she also got this headset on. And I was surprised. Even after 5 minutes, she was already used of having the headset on and also using the controller by walking around. And so my impression was that it has nothing to do with age. Of course, when you're a little bit older, it takes a lot of more time to adapt. But well, that's what I want to share with you, that even older people can use the technique. And I think they're very lonely, older people. So this could also be an added value for their life using this technique.
I agree. So that's not a problem. But you have always people, they are interested in new techniques, and other, they don't want anything about the technique. So
that's true.
And
that's true.
Yeah. So
I think,
I want to go sit down, but
I was just to add on to Diana's response. I think from the experience that I've had doing digital transformation and business change, there may be a correlation between age and change resistance, but I certainly wouldn't want to say that all people in any age group have a immediate reaction to any technology. I've actually found that it's obviously, it depends on the industry, but I know we were doing one public sector project where we had some roles that didn't matter. It wasn't people in IT. It was just, I guess it was mainly the leadership that were very receptive. And then we had other kind of frontline kind of workers that were not interested in the technology at all. And that was for many different reasons unrelated to age. It's the same with virtual reality. I think age will be a factor, but I wouldn't want to say that you shouldn't expect resistance from young people, certainly. I think there'll be a lot of resistance trying to embed virtual reality, augmented reality. Have to be realistic about that. Again, that's why it comes down to the change management side. It's about these types of transformations, you can't have just a IT capability that is involved. You have to have people that are their sole role is to make sure that people have a good experience and that they feel supported. And by that, I don't just mean support workers. I mean people that are doing a really good job at comms, that are essentially just keeping track of individual experiences. And I think over time, as I said, you get champions, and people will love to champion VR more than any other technology I've seen, because it's, again, it can be quite a wow moment. But definitely at the beginning, you have to put in so much extra attention for each individual user to make sure they have a positive reception. Yeah, I mean, I've similar to Danny, I've used the technology with quite a few older individuals, and it's been a mixed response actually. But I think every single person I've introduced this technology to has been willing to continue to use it, and perhaps some have had to warm up to it a bit more than others. But I think maybe I'm being very optimistic. Provided we manage it properly, it can always be done right.
Simon, there's another question from Christian Klein. Christian.
Well, there was a question from you guys asking what did you do during the presentations. I went out just to have a look on the YouTube channel where there's a live presentation or live show of the same thing, just to see how that experience was, and it's quite different. It's better, easier looking at the presentation than in this room, because I think the quality of the glasses is not that high that you see the characters, especially the small characters, very precisely. That's nicer in a normal presentation. At the side there was a discussion going on in the audience writing, so that's what I missed here. But the feeling of presence here in the 3D environment is totally different. So yeah, I went back to the 3D environment to enjoy this. And also one thing is that wearing a headset for 1.5 hours is very tiring. Still, the headsets are very heavy. So that's also one thing that I think people will have problems with when they have their headsets on for a long time.
I totally agree, Christian. So we need to be aware that creating our use cases and minimum viable product, if, for example, I'm in the lead, I won't plan a meeting for longer than 45 minutes, because that's already my impression also, that I get this response for people who are present. So we need to be aware. I fully agree that it shouldn't be a gimmick we are using. And also, last but not least, I'm also most of the time triggering my team members. Ladies and gentlemen, what did we saved at this moment? In pounds and in euros being present at this time. So also the positive side of the medal. This event, we're all at home, at least I presume that we're at home. So if this was a real live event, for example, in London or in Amsterdam, it will be the cost then of getting this event done. So I always end in our meeting, what was the saving or what was the benefit of this meeting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I said a lot.
For getting on with the time situation, I think there are very interesting questions. I think, Bart, you've got the last question before we go into the lobby and have some individual.
Yeah, it's more something that can add up to what Christian Klein said. And I think what Simon already is maybe in this new type of, hybrid digital environment, it also needs a new way of interacting. And what Simon did very nicely was asking the crowd, a couple of questions, and people got to raise their hands. And that's the kind of interaction you couldn't, get in a chat box. And I agree, some things, are maybe easier to interact with using text, if that's a possibility. But I think you can have great crowd engagement, and maybe in the future even more, by immersing and engaging the audience as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Bart, thank you very much. And also, Bart, I want to thank you about having the opportunity to use Connect 2 for this setting, this meeting. I also want to thank Simon and Danny for your interesting presentation. I don't have virtual flowers, but keep them in mind for me, giving it to you.
Box.
Yeah. Box,
so much.
yeah. Or
Yes.
elbow, but you can't see it. So it's thank you very much, both. I think we have got some 20 minutes left to go into the lobby or outside where the sun is shining, so we can have some individual talkings or meet. Before I end, I want to emphasize that the Industrial Reality event will take 3 days, so we have 2 more days with 2 other speakers. You can look at the website or at the flyer which speakers will be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. It could also be interesting. There's still some place. So please, thank you everybody for attending this meeting. Please have some time outside this building and get to know each other further. And yes, I will close this session. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you, Lucas.
Everyone.
Yes. Okay, a little applause. Yes, I hear some. Yeah, you have to, Bart. You have to make some button and then have the applause button, and then it will come up large. It's,
Yeah, that's something we're still
suggestions.
working for.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
In the first version, we had even a complete laser show, but that's something that got rid of. So yeah, I would like to thank Simon and as well as Danny for their talks on this first session, and I think we can all head the whole way and maybe briefly discuss afterwards, get to know each other, and then I think it's a wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh yeah.
Ja, hartstikke goede presentatie. Super interessant.
Maurice zit nog. Ben je nog live?
Niet te lang maken. Maar weet je, een heleboel mensen die zijn niet thuis in die wereld. En dat ben je hartstikke goed in het kort moment, vond ik.
Nou, ging goed hoor. Mooie presentaties.
Well, thanks everyone in the live stream for also joining and having a nice discussion. If you have any questions you want me to ask to anyone here, someone from Connect 2, someone from the Industrial Reality Hub, or maybe one of the speakers, please let me know. And I will make sure to try and hunt them down, locate them. There was one question from Marcelians